This guy only has a high school diploma, but he's always showing off, saying, "I work at a hospital." I bet he doesn't even do any significant work at the hospital. Such a pointless dude at a social mixer where I was the wingman. I constantly felt belittled by a classmate. He never missed an opportunity to assert his superiority. I was fed up with him. However, he didn't know the real me. Coincidentally, there was a woman at the mixer who knew my true identity. I reluctantly revealed it upon hearing it. That classmate was flabbergasted. "My name is Tim. I am a 28-year-old man currently working as a doctor in a hospital. I lost my mother to an illness when I was in middle school and was raised in a single-parent household by my dad. The experience of losing my mom to illness inspired me to become a doctor. It was a challenging journey, but I eventually earned my medical license and am now practicing medicine. However, whenever people find out I'm a doctor, they always have something to say. So, I just mentioned that I work at a hospital without going into specifics. I haven't been specific about my profession. Due to this, some acquaintances have misunderstood my actual profession. One of them is a guy named Mike, someone I've known since elementary school. I wouldn't call him a friend due to his character. Mike went to the same school for elementary, middle, and high school. He graduated from a national university, is a salesman for a major company, and is a man of flamboyant appearance and lifestyle. Even I, as a guy, have to admit he's handsome. His whole appearance screams money. There are rumors that he once spent tens of thousands of dollars in a single night at a club in downtown Las Vegas. So you get the impression he's a real ladies' man. But inside he is the worst kind of man, a scum to be honest. Even if he's dating a specific girl, he thinks nothing of making moves on other women. He can't handle his liar, and whether he has a girlfriend or not, he's always throwing parties. It's so much like that's the status of a man to do something like that. But actually, he was brought up in a normal family. I've told him several times that you should stop such behavior, but it doesn't seem to get through to him. You might wonder why I'm still in touch with such a guy. It's because he keeps inviting me to his mixers. It all started about a year ago when I bumped into Mike downtown after not having spoken since high school. He recognized me and approached. We were classmates, so he vaguely remembered my face. "Hey, are you Tim?" When I saw Mike, who was already dressed in full-body luxury brand stuff, from then on, I didn't really know who he was at first. "Who might you be?" I found myself asking. "Come on, man, it's me, Mike Williams, your classmate from senior year of high school." Even with that, I couldn't quite place him. That's because he looked completely different from when we were in high school. I don't recall having such a flashy guy in our class back then. It wasn't until he showed me a photo from high school on his phone that I exclaimed, "Oh, it's you." "Actually, I'm surprised you recognize me," I admitted. "You look exactly the same as you did in high school," he chuckled. "So, what are you up to these days?" he asked. "Me, I work at a hospital now." "You work at a hospital? You didn't go to college, did you?" he inquired. "All right, that's the story," I replied, just as we were about to dive into old times. For some reason, Mike remarked, "So you're basically saying you went straight from high school to being unemployed and now work at a hospital, right?" "No, that's not it," I tried to clarify, but he wasn't listening. He had made up his mind. "Working at a hospital is a big deal for a guy who just has a high school diploma," he concluded. "I don't just have a high school diploma," I retorted. "Well, whether you're a medical admin or a janitor, it's all hospital work, I get it. Men want to show off," he continued. Moreover, for some reason, he sympathized with me and said, "I feel bad for you, Tim. I'll invite you to our group hangouts." And that's how I started getting invitations almost every time. To be honest, even if I go to these hangouts, Mike always looks down on me by calling me just a high school grad and makes fun of that fact, laughing about it. Honestly, it feels like I'm just being made a fool of. And his personality is terrible, to be honest. Sometimes I don't even know why I go out with him every time, and I end up with a look of emptiness on my face. However, the guy has impeccable taste in restaurants, never misses on the food choice, and even offers to cover the cab fare home. To me, it feels like I'm just going out for a free delicious meal. So, here I am again, called by Mike to make up the numbers attending yet another gathering. Today's outing was supposed to be a 5-on-5 mixer, and the ladies were all nurses, peers in my field, which felt a tad refreshing. Mike seemed quite pumped up, stating, "I'm definitely getting a date tonight." By the way, he's supposedly seeing someone right now, but that doesn't stop him from hosting these meetings. It's human nature to seek out new connections, even if you're already dating someone, he'd say. As usual, his audacity almost feels refreshing. Tonight's venue is a fancy private dining room with a view overlooking New York. Mike had told me to dress sharp, so I wore the only decent jacket I had. Upon seeing me, the first thing out of Mike's mouth was, "Isn't that a bit plain?" "That's all I have," I replied. "Well, you're just a high school grad. It makes sense you'd have less money than me. You'll be perfect as the wingman," he teased. I wanted to tell him off, but I held my tongue. "All right, everyone, cheers." With Mike's call, the gathering officially began. We clinked glasses, and I took a sip of my draft beer. Although it was supposed to be a 5-on-5 mixer, only Mike and I showed up on the guy's side. The other three apparently flaked out. But the fewer men, the more chance for Mike to mingle with the ladies. He seemed to be in high spirits. The women chosen by Mike's impeccable taste were all incredibly beautiful. Last-minute no-shows happen now and then, but 3 at once is quite rare. Every time, I wonder just how unpopular Mike is. But then again, I also question my sanity for showing up almost every time he asks. Thanks, everyone, for coming tonight. I know we have some notable absences, but let's enjoy with the looks we have. Mike, still in high spirits, exclaimed. "Thank you for having us." The ladies cheerfully responded. Then one of the women turned to me and said, "You are Tim Miller." "I work in a hospital." "Nice to meet you," I replied, trying to keep it simple. Suddenly, the chatter among the 5 ladies went like, "What? No way. Perhaps they think I'm plain compared to Mike." Today, Mike's in his usual designer suit, whereas I'm just in regular clothes. Several minutes into the group date, Mike quickly nestled himself among the ladies, just like always. He was going on, boasting about his job and the luxury brands he owns. The ladies seemed to be enjoying his stories, laughing and giggling, making Mike even more cheerful. They'd had quite a lot to drink, and it seemed like Mike was pretty tipsy. As for me, I was enjoying my meal, especially the salmon ceviche, thinking, this is a lively group. There's never a mess when Mike picks the place. Both the drinks and the food are always on point. It felt like it had turned into a 1-on-5 date. Every now and then, the ladies chatting with Mike would glance over at me or whisper something. Although I was engrossed in my meal, I noticed this. Mike said to one of the women, Hey, Michelle, aren't I way cooler than him?" Wrapping his arm around her and pulling her close, Michelle, who he referred to, giggled and said, "Oh, stop it." I thought to myself that the atmosphere felt like one of those kinds of places. Then Mike said, "This guy, him man. He's been my buddy since elementary school, you know." Despite only having a high school diploma, He always brags about working at a hospital. I bet he's not even doing anything significant there. What a joke. Mike continued, and this guy, back in high school, he didn't stand out in class. Almost a nerd, only focusing on studies and part-time jobs. Even with all that studying, he didn't go to college. Probably because he grew up in a poor, single-parent household. Once that happens, man, life's pretty much over. Mike laughed loudly, while the women looked taken aback hearing Mike's words. I sighed. Mike, you've had too much to drink. Take it easy, man. I placed a glass of water in front of him and got up. What's the matter? Running away? Mike cheered, ignoring me. I headed to the restroom. Mike's nasty attitude when drunk isn't new, and the demeaning comments he makes about me are routine. It doesn't bother me anymore, but it's always a mood killer. So, it's best to excuse myself. Man, he's drunk again today. Can't just leave him like that. I'll just tune out the rest. Every time Mike goes to a mixer, he ends up like that, so I can't just leave him there. Can't really leave him with the ladies either, I thought as I walked out of the restroom. Someone suddenly approached. You're the director, right? The one who said that was Mabel, one of the participants of tonight's mixer who had introduced herself earlier. Her eyes widened at the mention of director, and she continued, I work as a nurse in the pediatrics department at 7 Stars Hospital. All the girls here tonight are nurses from 7 Stars Hospital. Upon hearing this, I couldn't help but exclaim, really? 7 Stars Hospital is where I currently serve as the director. Mike seems to be misunderstanding something, but aside from being a doctor, I also work as a hospital director. However, once people find out I'm the director, many so-called acquaintances with ulterior motives approach me, so I usually just say I work in the hospital. I'm not lying by saying that, but I never expected that tonight's group of girls would be nurses from our hospital. You don't interact much with the staff, do you, director? Seems Mabel picked up on my thoughts and gave a smile. From what I gathered, all these girls are in charge of the inpatient wards. I've been busy with hospital management conferences and such, and I seldom visit the inpatient wards. Moreover, I usually leave the hiring interviews for non-doctors to the head nurse, administrative head, or HR head, so I don't often recognize the nurses with a large hospital like ours. It's understandable, but everyone knows your name, at least. Mabel said, her smile a touch mischievous. I'm sorry. I apologized and vowed to remember from now on. Just so you know, we all recognized you, director, Mabel said. What? I wasn't sure back then, but when I heard the same name, I thought it might be you. It's quite surprising and amusing to find the director at a mixer. Ha! But why does Mike think you're just a regular hospital employee without a college degree? That's a fair question. Well, he just took my words about working at the hospital at face value. I explained the whole story. I see. So, Mike doesn't know the real you. It's not that much of a secret, but yeah, something like that. I laughed, but she seemed deep in thought. Let's head back, she suggested. I followed her back to our table. You know, having a college degree really matters. People like Tim who only finished high school, they just are not accepted in society, you know. A drunk Mike was still going on with his story. How can he not run out of things to say about the same topic? I sighed, but I knew there was no handling him in that state. The last time I tried to take a drunk Mike home, he acted like a baby, saying, "No way, I ain't going home yet," and started throwing a fit on the floor. I'd rather not remember that fiasco. Best to just leave him be. I felt bad for the girls, but they'd have to put up with him. I ordered a whiskey highball from the waiter and nibbled on some pasta. Then Mabel sat next to me, asking, "Is the pasta good, director?" I nearly spit out my drink and pasta, director. Whoa! Hearing Mel's words, Mike turned our way. "This guy, Tim, he's the director of the hospital where we work. Moreover, here's his medical license in Switzerland. He's quite the accomplished doctor." Then the remaining 4 women came over, saying, "I knew it," and I thought so. For some reason, all the women now gathered around me. I heard the director often attends conferences and is on business trips, so it's rare to meet you, but I had a feeling it was you. I was curious ever since I heard the name. One after another started chatting with me. "Well, since we're off duty now, you don't have to call me director, but thank you all for working so hard every day," I managed to reply. "We appreciate it, but a bonus would be nice indeed." The ladies all laughed together. The reason I became a doctor was because of the illness that took my mother's life when I was in middle school. I visited her almost every day while she was hospitalized, and seeing her suffer during her treatments made me want to save those in pain. To become a doctor, you need to go to medical school. Intuition is far from cheap. I couldn't afford to fail or repeat a year, so I studied hard. Given the high cost of med school, I even started a part-time job so I wouldn't be a burden to my father. High school felt like it was just studying and working, just like Mike said. In school, I was always hitting the books and working my side jobs all the time. I was so swamped every day that I don't remember having a typical teenage experience during that time. I heard that there was ongoing research in Switzerland about the disease that caused my mother's death. There were rumors that a cure might be found soon. It seems that such research is indeed advancing in Switzerland, so I decided to get my medical degree there, not in the US. Thankfully, I was good at German and French, had decent grades, and thought I'd have a better chance at finding a cure there. I discussed it with my father, who gave his blessing, and right after high school, I went to Switzerland on my own. To be honest, I didn't tell any of my classmates. It might be because I was too engrossed in studying and working, and I didn't have close friends. But I also didn't want any fuss about my decision to go to Switzerland. I got into a university and managed to get my medical license there. I also joined a team researching the disease and led a busy life as both a researcher and a doctor. And a few years ago, we finally established a cure for the disease. It's now treatable. But that meant my personal goal was achieved sooner than expected. While I was pondering what to do next, I got a call from Dr. Smith, a renowned authority on cardiology and a member of our team. Since my specialization also includes cardiology, I personally referred to Dr. Smith as Master. He proposed, "Tim, how about coming back to the States and becoming the director of one of our affiliate hospitals? We have a hospital in our medical group that we'd like to revamp. We're thinking of bringing in a young director to draw attention. Having a young director who's returned from overseas would be a great selling point. Plus, I like your dedication." Do I come across that way? Not everyone would go abroad to study medicine and research a cure, I replied. Why not try that passion as a hospital director? He suggested. Honestly, I wasn't sure if I could handle such a significant responsibility, but I decided to accept the offer. And about a year ago, I was entrusted with 7 Stars Hospital. But as a director, I feel I still have much to learn. Every day, Catherine, one of the attendees, told me, "Doctor, you always look so serious in the hallways. I thought you were much more intimidating," and laughed. Well, every day I'm anxious if I'm doing a good job as the director, and I can't help but furrow my brow, I replied. Don't worry, the current hospital really feels so homely. Exactly. The fact that they encourage not working overtime is great. As a director, at least I can do that. I don't want to work overtime either, Catherine said. The conversation unexpectedly took an exciting turn. While Mike was so shocked, he lost his words when he found out that I'm actually the head of a hospital. The women around me, including myself, were all excited, and then there was no one left around Mike. Seems like he got upset with the situation and was drinking his booze alone, looking pretty bored. Hearing about my role as a hospital director, it seems his buzz wore right off. He mumbled, "What the hell? You're the one with just a high school diploma." Well, truth be told, I didn't just finish high school. I graduated from a university in Switzerland. I replied with a wry smile. Anyway, Mike, I'm sorry, especially since you invited me. I'm not sure if it'll make it up to you, but I'll cover the bill tonight. Saying so, I took out my card and handed him $100. This should cover your cab fare for tonight. You've always been covering for me, I said. Don't worry about it. I might have been a high school grad from a single-parent low-income family here, but now I'm a director, I continued. Mike, with a frustrated look, just left the bar, and the group date came to an end. As it turned out, Mabel and I were headed in the same direction, so we decided to walk together. Director, you really take care of everyone, don't you? Mabel remarked. Oh, do I? If it were anyone else after being looked down upon like that for supposedly being just a high school grad, you would have left in anger. That happens all the time. I'm used to it, and I didn't want to leave the ladies in that situation. That's what makes you care. You're always putting up with it, right? That makes you a good person in my book, she said with a laugh. But why did you reveal my identity there? Because seeing you ridiculed like that, when I know how capable you really are, I couldn't keep silent. Plus, you're quite popular among the staff, so maybe you should mingle with everyone more. Wait, I'm popular? I asked, surprised. Yes, you became a director at such a young age, and everyone is eager to hear about your experiences in Switzerland, she explained. I had no idea. Being a director keeps me busy. Maybe from tomorrow, I'll try to interact more with everyone. Please do, Tim, Mabel laughed. The next day, while I was having lunch in the hospital's cafeteria, 5 of the female nurses from last night's mixer approached me, saying thank you for last night quite loudly. In fact, this caused a stir among the other staff members. What? The director went on a mixer. You know, the director was seriously looked down upon yesterday. The chatter began, and by evening, that talk had spread throughout the entire hospital. From that day on, other doctors would approach me, saying, "Hey, director, invite me to your next mixer too." From then on, I started actively engaging with other doctors, nurses, and staff. Although the catalyst was the mixer story, I felt I couldn't miss out on this opportunity. People always thought you, the director, were a pretty stiff type, but turns out you're quite approachable. I heard you've been attending those mixers quite a bit, they said, and I could only respond with a smile. From then on, I continued to engage like that, and I felt the overall vibe in the hospital started to improve. Even my mentor, Dr. Smith, who happened to visit the hospital, mentioned, "The hospital has become so much more welcoming. Good thing we left it in your hands, Tim." This made me more determined than ever to excel in my role as director. After that mixer, I began to regularly dine out with Mabel, and our relationship naturally progressed. A few years later, I proposed to Mabel. Of course, she said, "Yes, I'll do my best to support you, Tim. I've always had many responsibilities like the hospital, its staff, and all the patients who rely on us. But now I have one more precious thing to protect," I confessed. "I carry that weight every day. I'm not always sure if I'm making the best choices, but to keep everyone happy, I think I'll always give it my all, even if it means relying on others at times.
All right, everyone's presentations are done. Nick, the manager, said as he tried to move the discussion forward. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me and began to speak. There's apparently someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. His lackey, Mike, of course, agreed with Nick. I'm leaving. After leaving the meeting room, I started to shut down my computer. I noticed that an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking, there's no point in speaking up, no one will listen, I went home quietly. The next day, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. He was staring at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! Is something wrong? Mike looked at the screen with him. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Knowing the reason for Mike's distress, I thought to myself, serves them right. My name is Adam. My mother passed away when I was in the 9th grade, and I was raised by my father. Well, you could hardly call it being raised. After my mother passed, my father changed. He drowned his sorrows in alcohol, and though he still went to work, he squandered our living expenses on horse racing. Because of that, I had to start working part-time as soon as I entered high school. Every month, I went to the convenience store with bills in hand that couldn't be auto-deducted from my father's account. Even though I endured it because I didn't want to be alone, I reached my limit in my second year of high school and dropped out. I found a live-in job at a distant inn. Thank you for everything. The day I left home, my father, still staring at the TV, spoke. Take care. That was our last conversation. Back then, 18 wasn't the age of majority, so I needed my father's permission to work, and I couldn't hide my place of employment. Yet, my father never visited me even once. I kept working just to survive, and before I knew it, I was 42. Years of hard work paid off, and I was transferred to the headquarters. I was thrilled to be recognized by the company, as I thought I'd be working in the field until retirement due to my lack of formal education. Listen up. Our work can change the future of our employees. Don't drag us down. On my first day after the transfer, Nick, dressed in an expensive suit, spoke sternly. There was a reason for this. Our inn was located in a prominent tourist destination, known so well that everyone in the state could sing its commercial jingle. At its peak, we had 5 locations within the state. But that was long ago. Due to financial difficulties and aging facilities, only the place where I had worked for many years and the original establishment remained. I was prepared to lose my job anytime, but now there was a glimmer of hope. With the rise of social media, the tourist area where the inn was located started gaining attention again. Depending on how hard the sales department, where I was transferred, worked. We could either thrive or be forced to give up this prime location to the new hotel chains continuously popping up. For Nick, who had switched careers from another industry to strengthen our sales, this was a battle he couldn't afford to lose. I understood why he had to be strict. I will do my best. Nick sneered at my enthusiastic declaration. Did you not hear what I said? I'm sorry. I thought I was listening carefully. Out of habit from years of customer service, I apologized reflexively, though I had no idea what had offended him. Someone was watching me with a smirk. In this department, there are those who are expected to excel and those who have been shoved here because they have nowhere else to go. You are the latter. It was Mike, the section chief. He's 7 years younger, at 35. But he was called to headquarters much earlier than I was and had been moving around within the headquarters ever since. I'm not jealous, but I can't accept that he's my boss. Graduating from a prestigious university, he has an unusually high pride and caused many problems as a newbie, making things very difficult for me when I was the front desk leader. When I found out Mike was transferred to the sales department a month before me, I was disheartened. Mike is right. With just a middle school diploma, there's not much you can do. Don't even think about achieving results. As if I didn't exist, Nick remarked, I'm thirsty. Mike eagerly ran to the coffee maker. It seems Mike is Nick's lackey. I regretted being happy about my transfer to headquarters, wishing I had stayed on site forever. Send a direct mail to every company on this list by the end of the day. Nick only assigned me tasks that even a new graduate could handle. What? There are over 1,000 companies. You want me to send to all of them by today? Yes, if you and your fellow misfits split the work, even those with nowhere else to go should finish by today. I glanced at the employees typing away expressionlessly. They were worn out from customer service, only thinking about leaving on time, or were women reassigned after having children. With zero motivation for work. Even Sam, a new graduate from the same university as Mike, who was supposed to be among the expected achievers, had no enthusiasm for the job. Having joined the company wanting to do customer service. I don't care what they say, I plan to quit anytime, he said. Only Nick and Mike were highly motivated, making all the decisions between the two of them. I originally only wanted to work at the inn to survive and had no particular attachment to this job. I swallowed my words, thinking I had no right to reprimand them. About a month after the transfer, Nick told us with a frustrated look. To commemorate the 50th anniversary, we've decided to create a plan exclusive for one group per day. Originally, Mike and I were supposed to come up with it, but our president, Mr. Thompson, insists on hearing everyone's opinions. So, you all get a chance. As Nick explained, Mike began handing out prints. Make sure not to embarrass Nick. If your ideas are half-baked, you'll have to redo them. It seemed that they had printed his handwritten notes by Mr. Thompson, which included several questions and a section for free responses. It made sense why Nick had to seek our input, given that all responses had to be submitted to Mr. Thompson. We were given a week to think about it, and a meeting was scheduled to compile our ideas. My plan is to let guests enjoy both the old and modern America. Nick began the presentations. Guests would watch a master confectioner at a nearby traditional sweet shop make sweets in front of them. The welcome drink would be premium tea in a bottle. Nick's plan was certainly attractive. After his presentation, Nick called on us to present in the order we were seated. Just as I stood up for my turn. All right, everyone's presentations are done. Excuse me, I haven't. I recently found out something. Nick interrupted me. There's someone in this department who didn't graduate high school and is just a part-timer. He was likely talking about me. I joined the company as a part-timer and was made a full-time employee when I turned 20. That was 20 years ago, so Nick and Mike probably had no chance to know until recently. Meetings should be for employees only. Absolutely right. After that, Nick kept creating opportunities to solicit everyone's opinions, purposefully excluding me from speaking. The meeting unexpectedly heated up and went past the scheduled end time. A few people asked to leave, and the discussion continued with the remaining few. Still here? Normally, you'd leave in that situation. Though I had no attachment to the job initially, hearing kind words from customers made me want to make them happier. For someone like me, with nowhere to go, the inn was my home and customer service was my life. I felt pathetic about my current self. I'm leaving. I left the conference room and started shutting down my computer. I noticed an email had arrived, not in my personal inbox, but in the company's shared email. Thinking no one would listen to what I had to say anyway, I quietly went home. The next day, while preparing the DM as instructed, I heard a commotion from Nick's desk. In his haste to stand up, he hit his knee on the desk. He stared at his computer screen, his face pale. Nick! What's wrong? Mike, thinking he should be the first to rush over, approached Nick while still wearing his coat. He peered at the screen with Nick. And he turned even paler than Nick. Why is he so angry? Who is responsible for this company? Nick, more irritated than ever, asked, and Mike answered without checking. Probably Sam. Sam wasn't there because he was attending a morning training session for new hires. Nick gave up on getting angry and returned his gaze to the screen. They were looking at an email that arrived right after the end of the working day yesterday. Apparently, no one, including me, had checked it before leaving. The email was from a large company that used us for their annual employee trips. The president and executives of that company also frequently used our services personally. President of the company, Mr. Mason himself, had declared that neither he nor his company would ever use our services again. Well, some companies cancel their employee trips or stop using our services due to financial struggles. let's just move on. Mike kept wiping the sweat from his forehead with a handkerchief. Knowing why Mike was so agitated, I quietly watched their interaction. Do you know how much revenue we get from that company? We can find other guests to fill the rooms, but we'll lose the banquet costs, gift shop revenue, rental car fees, and more. Moreover, the gifts were supposed to be prepared by the traditional confectionery shop involved in Nick's proposed plan. If it's known that we incurred such a huge loss at this critical time, Nick's position in the company would be jeopardized. Nick took a deep breath, seemingly trying to calm himself. All right, Mike. Go to New York right now and apologize to Mr. Mason. What? You're coming with me, right? I have urgent work to do. I trust you, which is why I'm entrusting this to you. Please. Mike, believing Nick's sincerity, agreed with a determined look on his face, saying, yes. That's Nick for you. Even if Mike went to apologize, Nick would shift all the blame onto him if the client didn't change their mind. Well, it was Mike's fault to begin with, so it served him right. About 3 hours later, Sam answered a call from somewhere and repeatedly apologized, saying, I'm very sorry. Everyone watched to see what was happening. After ending the call, he informed Nick with a weary tone. When Mike arrived at the client's company, he only made things worse, further infuriating Mr. Mason. He was demanding, get his boss here immediately. It was no wonder Sam was exhausted, dealing with such a call right after returning from training. What is that idiot doing? All right, Adam, you're coming with me. If sacrificing Mike didn't work, then I must be next. Normally, I'd want to refuse at all costs, but I saw an opportunity in this situation. If I can be of assistance, I'd be happy to join you. I immediately followed Nick, and we flew to New York. When we introduced ourselves at the reception, it became clear how serious the situation was, as the receptionist personally escorted us to the president's office. Angry voices leaked through the door, making both Nick and me uneasy. Excuse me. I'm Nick, the supervisor. I understand my subordinate has caused you trouble, and I deeply apologize. Nick, with his experience in the corporate world, knew enough to offer an apology before excuses. However, his customer service skills left much to be desired. I sighed as I saw Mike trembling like a small dog in the corner of the room. What kind of training are you giving your subordinates? Mr. Mason glared at Nick with a red face. The intensity of his gaze made even Nick take a step back. Regrettably, I joined this company only 2 years ago and was unaware of Mike's issues. I should have identified his shortcomings sooner. Indeed. I should have realized sooner. No sensible person would come to apologize and then give a lengthy presentation on the drawbacks of not using their in. Nick froze, his mouth slightly open. Suspecting the worst, I picked up the documents that had fallen to the floor. It seemed Mike hastily prepared these documents on the plane, listing the disadvantages. Disadvantage 1: if you change the venue for the company trip, employees might suspect it's for cost-cutting reasons, leading to a negative impression. Reading it aloud half-jokingly, Nick snatched the papers from my hand and checked the contents with a furious expression. Among the stack of documents was a receipt from a nearby convenience store's copy machine. I felt a pang of dread, hoping he hadn't shown the receipt as well. What do you think he said when I asked what kind of nerve he had to do this? I'm very sorry. Faced with the dire situation, Nick must have thought there was nothing left to do but apologize. In a voice smaller than I'd ever heard from him, he uttered words of apology. He said, I'm a Harvard graduate. I don't believe I said anything wrong. Mike! What have you done? Forgetting his plan to pin the blame on Mike, Nick yelled loudly, even in front of Mr. Mason. I didn't do anything wrong. You're still saying that? Look at him. Mike pointed at me with a shaking hand. I was assigned to headquarters in my 20s and now I'm a section chief. This guy only made it to headquarters at 42. Everything I've done proves I was right. So why are we losing the contract? Having said his piece, Mike collapsed to the floor. Of course. You were sent there because you had nowhere else to go. Mike never expected to hear such words from someone he looked down upon. He lunged at me, and Nick hurriedly stepped in to stop him. Mr. Thompson told me Mike is a quick thinker, and to take good care of him. There's no way he was pushed aside. Don't make things worse here. He didn't say quick thinker, he said only quick-witted, didn't he? I don't remember that part. I recalled the many troubles Mike caused when he was a newbie. When Mike was on the front line, his pride was so high that he never apologized to customers. Customer service, especially in our job, doesn't work alone. It brings both good and bad situations. If the front staff or housekeepers made mistakes, or the cleaning company didn't properly clean a room, one had to apologize to the customers regardless of personal fault. Mike, in such situations, would never apologize, insisting he wasn't at fault. This often angered customers, and as the front desk leader, I frequently had to apologize on his behalf. He caused complaints and disrupted operations, which is why he was quickly moved to headquarters. In departments where he didn't interact directly with customers, his quick thinking was beneficial and things went well. But it seemed his flaws were starting to show. Corporate reservations are supposed to be entered into the system by the sales representative. But a quick check yesterday revealed that more than 10 items were missing from the client's reservation. The handover document clearly stated what needed to be prepared. Why didn't you enter it into the system? Why do we have to give them special treatment? Filling rooms near the banquet hall, setting up all the food in advance. Specifying the brand of wine, they're too demanding. No wonder he always angered customers, I thought, feeling a headache coming on. Grouping them in rooms near the banquet hall is for our benefit too. It makes it easier for the staff to set up beds and serve breakfast since everyone's schedule is synchronized. As for the other requests, Mr. Mason suggested them to lighten our load. I didn't know that. Nick finally seemed to realize that Mike was the one who had angered the client. What did you say to them? I just told them we wouldn't give them special treatment anymore. We shouldn't waste effort on things that don't bring in money. I was utterly exasperated at his lack of understanding of customer service. Of course, we shouldn't comply with unreasonable demands. But carrying over successful practices from past stays makes customers feel remembered and enhances their experience. Good memories encourage repeat visits. That's part of our job. I looked down at Mike, who was sitting on the floor. In our job, nothing is a waste. Mr. Thompson likely moved you to the sales department, hoping you'd finally understand this. How do you think he feels now that you've failed to meet his expectations? Mike, tears in his eyes, fled the president's office. I was amazed he still hadn't apologized. You have it tough, Adam. It's okay, we're all employees of the same company. I deeply apologize for this disrespectful incident. Especially after all the care you've shown us. If it weren't for you, Adam, I really would have stopped staying here. When I heard you were moving to the sales department, I was willing to reconsider if you handled it. Seeing us talk so amicably, Nick's face contorted. Do you two know each other? Adam's service is excellent. I always requested him specifically. Normally, we don't accept specific staff requests, but we made an exception for Mr. Mason, adjusting my shifts accordingly. He had personally stayed at our hotel just before my transfer, and during casual conversation, I mentioned, I'm moving to the sales department soon. If I hadn't told him then, things could have been much worse. Please continue to take care of us. I look forward to it. On the return flight, Nick awkwardly offered me a can of beer. It's still working hours. Of course, I had no intention of forgiving him for a single beer. Nick might try to pin everything on Mike and avoid any consequences. While pondering this, a startling fact came to light. Nick, the tea bottles for the plan have arrived. I handed Nick a bottle labeled with our inn's name. They look good. What are you talking about? These are plastic bottles. I had assumed we would use the trendy, high-end bottling tea. But what arrived were ordinary plastic bottles of tea with customized labels. The only unique aspect was the label, which had the inn's name, making it look customized. Upon further investigation, I discovered that a substantial amount of money was set to be paid to the tea company. It was priced like bottling tea. Does this plastic bottle really cost $100 each? The tea inside is specially blended for us. The extra cost is for that. Wouldn't it be better to use another tea company? Or is there a specific reason we must use this one? As Nick continued to make excuses, I showed him a printed email. I informed the tea company's president, Mr. Mitchell, that we discovered irregular payments and he confessed. He said you two were high school classmates and planned to split the extra money. That idiot. Why did he confess? That's not important. You should worry about yourself, this could turn into a police matter. Opening the bottle cap, I suggested. How about calming down with this tea? It supposedly has a relaxing effect. Nick drank the tea frantically. In the following days, decisions were made about their fates. Mike was reassigned to the General Affairs Department, with no chance of transfer or promotion, as per Mr. Thompson's orders. As for Nick, since the payment to the tea company hadn't yet been made, he narrowly avoided legal trouble. Instead, he was encouraged to leave the company, and to avoid further complications, Nick submitted his resignation. Rumor has it that connections between HR departments have made it difficult for him to find new employment. Even though it was good to have those two gone, something unexpected happened in the sales department. Everyone became motivated and united in refining the 50th anniversary plan. In the end, my plan was adopted. We collaborated with the Tourist Information Center to provide personalized guides. The plan, tailored to the number of guests, was truly special for the 50th anniversary. Hey, is Adam's family coming to stay? I immediately booked that special plan for my family. Sam noticed it on the reservation list and quickly picked up on it. Yes, I'm inviting my father. That's great. I might invite my parents too. I lacked the courage to face my father just as Adam. But here, with the confidence Mr. Mason praised, I felt ready. The 50th anniversary plan was a perfect opportunity to reconnect with my father. I hoped to bring back the days when we could laugh together as we once did.